Getting the Pioneer Pole Award for Race 1 of the 2013 HARC Pro Series would be Damir Baizhiyenov in the 13 car. On his outside would be the 24 of Mitch McDonald. Onto the backstretch, Mitch McDonald would go to the inside of Damir Baizhiyenov and try to make the pass. However, going into turn 3, he didn't have enough of a run, and Damir Baizhiyenov would continue as leader. You might have seen a small bobble back in the field a little bit. Mason Wood made contact with Connor Breton, but they both made incredible saves to continue on. Down into the tri-oval, Damir Baizhiyenov would lead the first lap, but Trip Engritz would dive to the inside and try to make the pass going into turn 1. Going into turn 1, Connor Breton made contact with Mark Nutt, sending them down the track, but they both made incredible saves and continued on undamaged. Drivers further back in the field, however, weren't so lucky. Kyle Pulanini made contact with Dixie Normus, and they both slid back up the track and caused a huge melee going onto the backstretch. This incident obviously brought out caution 1. Alex Tanker, Jacob Young, Robert Moss, Richard Trelinsky, Stephen Henhock, and numerous others were also involved. Further up the track, Mason Wood was turned by Kyle Pulanini coming back up the track. Mason Wood made contact with Spencer Fullerton, who in turn turned Richard Trelinsky. James O'Shea then slammed into Richard Trelinsky, causing massive damage for both cars. Richard Trelinsky, Andreas Allen, and Robert Moss all went out of the race from this accident. Let's go on board with Brock McMahon as he escaped this disastrous second lap turn of events. As he sees cars spinning in front of him, he dodges out of the way of them and then has to deal with the crash up ahead, which he also narrowly avoids. James Bond, who made a great pass on Peter Saviano coming to the line for the caution flag, would lead them back to the green flag. The next lap in turn 1, Eric Cesar was turned by Zach Harvick. They both slid up back into the outside wall, and Eric Cesar slid down the track where he was clipped by Ben Dover and slammed by Jacob Young. He did a roll and came to a stop in the infield grass. Meanwhile, further up the track, Ben Dover, who made contact with Eric Cesar, slid down the track right in the path of Zachary Brown, Nathan Gibson, Stephen Henhock, and Kyle Pulanini, who were all collected. Jacob Young, who slammed into Eric Cesar, was hit in the back by Zachary Hofschneider, and Jacob Young began a series of barrel rolls down the banking in turn 2. Zach Hofschneider, Zach Harvick, Eric Cesar, Jacob Young, Kyle Pulanini, Zachary Brown, Ben Dover, and Nathan Gibson would all go out of the race in this horrendous accident. James Bond would once again lead them back to the green flag. Going down the backstretch, Mark Nutt and Gary Tang would team up, and they would get around James Bond going into turn 3. Going out of the tri-oval, Dixie Normus would try to make the pass on Mark Nutt, but Damir Baizhiyenov would go around both of them on the bottom line. In turn 1, James Bond would go too high on the racetrack and hit the wall and almost spin out. Further up the track, a chain reaction accident put Gary Tang in the wall and he came back down the track, spinning a few other drivers out, such as Rong Young and Shrimp Engritz. Damir Baizhiyenov, our pole sitter, would bring the field back to the green flag. Not long after, Peter Saviano would drop to the inside, and Mitch McDonald would go even lower as they go into turn 1. Mitch McDonald would inherit the lead going out of turn 2. Mitch McDonald and Ilya Bondarenko teamed up and worked together for the next few laps, and they stayed 1-2. A few laps later, Ilya Bondarenko was shuffled back in the pack, and Mitch McDonald, Brock McMahon, and Leo Walker would team up, and no one could really catch them for the next few laps. Brock McMahon decided to make his move on the 22nd lap, he dived to the inside of Mitch McDonald going into turn 3 and was able to make the pass. Next lap, Damir Baizhiyenov would make his move to the inside of Brock McMahon and would take the lead, as we see Pichu London coming back out of the pits. We almost had yet another crash in turns 1 and 2 as Peter Saviano got into James Bond, but they made great saves and continued on. Dixie Normus and Connor Breton moved to the inside going into turn 3 and they were able to get around Damir Baizhiyenov and Brock McMahon. Coming down into the tri-oval, Connor Breton was able to move to the inside as Dixie Normus tried to block Damir Baizhiyenov, and he would go to the point. Shortly afterwards, though, Penn Isman would get a run going into turn 1, and he would go around both of them. On lap 25, they caught up with the lap traffic of James O'Shea and Shrimp Engrits, and they didn't have too much problems with them. Going into turn 3, Mark Nutt tried to get around Alex Tanker. He turned him and they came back up the track right in front of Spencer Fullerton, Damir Baizhiyenov, and Dixie Normus. Damir Baizhiyenov, Dixie Normus, and Alex Tanker would all go out of the race from this accident. Meanwhile, up the track, Penn Isman would lead the field back to the yellow flag, but then Penn Isman would slide up the track and get into the wall and then hit Luke Walker and spin out. I don't know what he was doing or whether he just blew a tire or I don't know, but considerable damage to that 69 car now. Meanwhile, as the drivers were slowing down for the caution flag, Alex Tanker came flying in and slammed into Spencer Fullerton for no apparent reason whatsoever. I don't know whether he thought that Spencer was the one who turned him to start that accident or what, but completely uncalled for by Alex Tanker. Under this caution, Penn Isman, Luke Walker, and Damir Baizhiyenov, the top 3, would all come into pit road. This gave James Davis the lead on the restart. Pichu London and James O'Shea are a lap down, so they start on the inside line. Going out of turn 2, Ron Young goes to the inside of James Davis, but makes contact with him, and James Davis just spun out. Connor Breton spinning in the back. Shrimp Engrits involved. Ilya Bondarenko damaged. Completely uncalled for Ron Young, spinning out the leader. And 16 laps to go. Just ridiculous. I'm glad he got damaged from that accident. That was completely uncalled for. In the meantime, Pichu London and James O'Shea actually got their laps back because they beat Gary Tang, who's now our leader, to the start-finish line. So great job by those two. Gary Tang would lead them back to the green flag on thankfully, the final restart of the race. Onto the backstretch, Mitch McDonald would go to the outside of Gary Tang. With some help from Peter Saviano and Leo Walker, he would actually make the pass going into turn 3 on the outside line. That's something we haven't seen all day. The next lap, Luke Walker and Mark Nutt would dive to the inside and would not be able to get the lead going into turn 3. Mitch McDonald has a great car today. He started second and he looks in pretty good position right now. A few laps later, the field started to run single file until Luke Walker tried to go to the inside, but he wouldn't be able to make the pass. With only 5 laps to go, Mitch McDonald would still have the lead, but when they came up upon lap traffic, Connor Breton made contact with Mitch McDonald and spun right down into the path of Mason Wood. This incident would not be bring out a caution, as both cars were able to save their cars without too much damage, and they continued on. Luke Walker would inherit the lead from this lap battle. With just 5 laps to go, we have a 3-car breakaway at the front. We have Luke Walker, Mitch McDonald, and Penn Isman. They look like the 3 cars who are going to battle it out for the win. Rounding turn 3, coming with just 2 laps to go, Luke Walker would give the other drivers a signal that he was going to pit. He had run out of fuel Mitch McDonald and Penn Isman would go to the outside, and sure enough, Luke Walker would have to pit. Coming to the white flag, it looked like Mitch McDonald had a big lead over Penn Isman. But Penn Isman had actually just run out of gas, and he had to go into the pits, leaving Mitch McDonald out to take the white flag all by himself. However, the other drivers were too far back to have a chance to battle Mitch McDonald for the win, and he would come down to the checkered flag to win his first ever HARC race and his first ever start here at Daytona. James Bond would come across the line second, Brock McMahon third, Leo Walker fourth, and Peter Saviano fifth.